Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry. And all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all worked for all the major publishers in the business. Together, we've published somewhere around 75 children's books, and we've all taught illustration at university art schools.
That is correct. Each week we come at you guys with fantastic illustrator interviews or listener questions, like we're going to do today. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we argue, but each time you learn something brand spanking new.
We haven't had a good argument in a while.
Let's talk about Bitcoin and politics. That'll get
or AI. All
plenty
three
of
of
things
us
are
agree
argued
on
about.
AI art.
Plenty of
we
things.
were talking about that at my union the other night, Will.
About what?
That we haven't argued. My union's really all over that.
Yeah, at your union meeting. I wanted to point out Lee's been doing these amazing watercolor illustrations recently. He's been posting them on his Instagram account. You want to tell us what's going on there?
Well, I am doing I'm doing my tarot deck too. So I'm kind of doing two sort of bigger projects, but one thing was it's funny because it started out with a conversation with my wife about what my next steps are going to be once the tarot deck is done. And I'm just sick of being inside all the time. That's the one thing about being an illustrator that's kind of bums me out. I'm a really outdoorsy kind of person and I like going outside. So I started, looking at doing some tours and sketching outside and stuff like that, and came up with the idea of doing this location trip to Spain. And so that looks like it's going to happen next year in May of 2025. And so I'm gearing up for that, and I'm really doing a deep dive on how to use what media to use in the field, what facilitates a good image quickly. Not just going out there and being like, okay, I'm just drawing this building for whatever reason, but really diving in and saying, okay, what is the fastest way to get a result that it actually looks good? Most location drawings, here's what I'm trying to solve. Most location drawings and paintings do not look good to me. They're boring.
They're badly designed a lot of times too.
What's that?
They're poorly designed a lot of times too.
That's the problem. I mean, I look to a book like This is Paris or something like that by what's his name? Sesek. That's how you say his last name? And he's designing these images. I mean, he's approaching it location design as a graphic designer. And I think it's amazing. Like some of the stuff that he does, it's sort of stylized, but it's real. I mean, you can tell that here's the Eiffel Tower, here's a cafe and all that stuff. It's really well designed. And most of the things, like Will said, they just look really sloppy and it doesn't facilitate a good look. So I'm really kind of diving deep in like, what is the easiest materials to use to get a good result if you have 5 minutes? And then so I'm kind of breaking them down into, you have 5 minutes and you're with your family. What media would be good for that? Because you're not going to be able to camp out for 2 hours and do a full painting. And then, there's the level 2, which is, okay, maybe there's a little color added. You got 15 minutes. What materials are you going to use in that? And then the 30-minute sketch and then a full illustration, even done on location. And so those are kind of the 4 areas I'm playing with, and I'm just playing with the media. So I'm building a new palette. I'm testing how you carry the materials. I'm doing sort of a deep dive into it because I'm going to be teaching this workshop and I want it to be different than, oh, now we're in a pretty place. I'm just going to paint this picture.
What would you say it's like? It's better to go into, like, say you're going to be in some downtown city. There's a main street. There's probably some larger buildings. There's probably some older buildings. What would you do to prepare to, like, knowing that's where you're going to be location sketching? What would you do to prepare for that particular type of situation?
Depending on, again, the time frame, there's 2 things I would do is pick the right media and practice even basic shapes, like drawing a box with the set of materials that I'm going to bring down there. If the box doesn't look good that you draw in your sketchbook, the building that you draw in that with that same media is not going to look good. Right. And the other thing is, especially with a city, there's certain problems that I think start to come in that the countryside doesn't really have as much. And that is, you sort of get overwhelmed with stuff. And so what my approach to that is, there's 3 things that need to be drawn. there's the detail. I would start with details. So a page of details might mean just a window setting or just a door frame or a lamp post, like something that you think is interesting on location. So I want a whole page of basically you're looking at this giant scenes, but you're saying, okay, I just want to draw something small. And then the next thing would be a medium-sized drawing, which would be like a storefront, but not the entire street. That's what everybody does is they go, like we were talking about to New York City, and then they try to draw the entire city. And you can do that, but it typically overwhelms you. And so basically starting really tiny, going to a medium drawing, and then backing up and really simplifying if you're going to a bigger drawing, like silhouette shapes and stuff like that. So that's what I would be thinking is these approaches, like we were talking about, if you're driving down a busy street in the city and you need gas, the only thing you're going to notice is gas stations. And you approach location drawing the same exact way. I'm looking for just a nice window display out of this entire city. You can find it really quickly. Or, I mean, I've even done it where like fire hydrants were one of the focuses. And there's some amazing fire hydrants in New York City, and different cities have different kind of infrastructure. All of a sudden you say, okay, I'm only going to draw fire hydrants. Well, you start picking out your subject matter really easily. So fun to do.
What I find when teachers teach either still painting or like you're talking about, like location drawing and painting, is they're mostly telling their students, kind of setting them free to just like draw and paint. But what they're not doing is teaching them the aesthetic of the composition of like, why am I choosing to paint this? And
right.
The teachers always look so much better, but it's not, and people get enamored like, oh, you're so good at painting, but the reason they like it is because of the aesthetic as well.
It's everything. It's everything. And it's really weird too, that like most of the time when people go sketch on location, they still see in terms of, like, remember when we used to carry like Polaroids or cameras out? I mean, I guess your phone is the same way. When you take a picture with the phone, you have a square of information or a rectangle of information. But in your sketchbook, the edges don't have to be a rectangle. Like, okay, I got to fill in the sky at the top and then the building. You can kind of draw what you want to and get much more interesting design shapes if it's not, everything isn't in a square or a box or a rectangle. And so it's just approaching, like Will was saying, let's talk about the design before you go out there. Like, don't make a square, because then you just get these, rectangles and squares all over the place. There's much more interesting ways to do it, but you have to plan on it beforehand. So anyway, long story short, what I'm doing is I'm building a class that people are going to take before we go on location. And that way we can talk about this stuff in the comfort of your home. You can test the materials and then work your way from simple to complex. And then when we get to Spain, everybody knows what to do.
Smart.
Right. What do you think is like what's the purpose of location sketching? I get that it's different for every person. And I imagine for some people, it's just, I'm outside of the house and I'm someplace else. And this is like a catalyst or some sort of like reason for me to go somewhere because I'm going to location sketch. But for like the working illustrator, what's the purpose?
I think it's to gain a visual library, so to speak, in your head of the way things go together. I mean, if you approach it as sort of a design exercise, how values come together in different ways, how lighting hits things in different ways, and then you bring that back to your illustration. And that's why I think it's important to go back to what Will was saying, is approaching it as a designer, because you need to be able to just like take, okay, there's this really great tree. Well, what's the breakdown of the tree? I don't want to just take that tree and now put that tree in all my illustrations. I want to take like what's interesting about that tree, draw it, and then analyze it, and then say, okay, now I can bring what I thought was interesting to these illustrations. And I don't have to use that exact tree, but now I have this education sort of.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yeah. I think too, like when you're drawing from life and you're drawing on location, like that has a way to sear itself into your brain more than any sort of photo reference, more than any mood board that you put together. I could think, I don't do a ton of location sketching, but I can think right now, I can remember every place that I've location sketched and what I've drawn, and that stuff is like sunk into my brain because I spent 15 minutes looking at something every detail and trying to replicate it, or a half an hour or an hour or something like that. And those details are like in my brain.
Yeah. It's weird. I don't understand how that works, but it's true. I don't know. There's something about being on site and drawing. There's the other things too, though, that the negative side of it is everyone coming up and watching you. You're a little bit on stage, and that can be a little disconcerting. Everybody's like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then like, if it's a bad drawing, you're like, oh, I'm just sitting here drawing a really terrible thing.
One thing I did, was I had a character. I had a graphic novel I was working on. And so I took my character from that graphic novel and put him in these places. I was on a trip to Spain as well, doing a workshop over there. And I got a couple days to just kind of go around and draw and do stuff. And I took my character and I put him in these different environments because the environments matched the locations that I wanted in my comic. And so that was a way for me to make the location like really suit my needs as an illustrator. Instead of just drawing, a alleyway street, to put my character in there like Lost or something.
Right.
It was like, it changed the whole thing for it.
Well, don't you think we also have we have stock ideas of house and tree and car and all this stuff. And like, once you get outside, you realize how much more interesting the real world is than your mental library that you could bring with no reference, I do like drawing from reference too.
Yeah, reference is good. I mean, sometimes you have to like get a job done. And, like yesterday I was drawing this, working on this comic, and, the background is a beach scene and there's like a grove of palm trees. What am I going to do? I have to go get reference for that. Right.
Yeah. I mean, a certain amount of practicality involved.
Yeah. I want to show you this book. Actually, you'd love this book. It's called The Art of Noticing by Rob Walker.
I like it.
And he's got 131 ways to spark creativity, find inspiration, and discover joy in the everyday. And I go off and on where I go back into this book, but essentially I'll just read one of the they're not even I guess there are kind of broken down in chapters, but he'll have like a page a day that you could go check out. And one of them today was reframe the familiar. And it said, look at a window from your house that you ignore. Just look out that window, a window you may even have forgotten that was there. Look at it and find 3 things that you've never noticed before from that vantage point. And so it requires you to like sit there and like look out the window and be like, oh yeah, look, I never noticed that shingle was, off place on my neighbor's house. Or I never noticed, there's a brick on the ground or something like that. But that's the kind of stuff, like those little exercises I think help you in your situations that you find yourself in as an artist, where you're sitting there drawing, how do I make this illustration a little bit more unique, a little bit more personal, a little less stock image and more personal. And it's just throwing in all those little details from noticing things.
I like it. I mean, I was going to ask you guys, this is sort of peripherally related, that and what you're talking about is like like I said, basically adding to your visual library and seeing and sort of noticing the things that are actually around you. And then the idea to that would be to bring it into your illustrations. What I've been noticing on Instagram, and see if you guys agree with this, is that a lot of illustrators make the same painting over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like just rehashing. I mean, if you could like press the AI button and regenerate it, it's like the same concept, same media. It's like they're not experiencing anything new.
It's a comfort zone.
It's a true comfort. At a certain point, you're almost imitating yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like Wes Anderson, to use a very popular person, I used to love Wes Anderson's film. I thought they were really original. And now I feel like he's sort of copying himself.
Well, I think there too, you've got so many people inspired by it that you see Wes Anderson knockoffs or Wes Anderson inspired stuff, but
right. True.
But I don't know. Have you seen his most, did you see Asteroid City?
Mm-mm.
I haven't seen that one. So is he stepping up to the plate again, or is it?
It's so the whole thing feels like it's a play, like it's on a set, even though it's out. I don't know how they did it. I kind of want to watch the making of, but it takes place in this little town in the middle of the desert, like Nevada desert. And the whole thing feels like it's on a stage, but it's clearly outside. So I don't know. He's it's just amazing what
I'll take
he's
another one.
able to
I do
do.
think he's a visionary. I think he's a great designer. And
Yeah.
I guess you just got to watch out for repeating yourself enough. I mean, people have a certain style, but then, like Will said, they get so comfortable in it. I think that's one reason to step out in the world, get some new
Yeah.
motivation, new stories,
Mhm.
maybe.
Yeah. Well, we got a few questions today. Should we dig into them?
Let's
We
dig.
probably should.
This first one I sent you guys, I feel like we already answered it, so let's pass on it. And
How did we already answer it? We didn't even ask it.
No, I think we did it in a previous episode, and I accidentally
gotcha.
like rehashed it.
Well, now everybody's going to wonder what it is.
Now they'll never know. Actually, I'll tell you what. Stay to the end of the episode, and we'll let you know what that question was. That's our little trick. Get people to watch the whole time, listen the whole time. Okay, this one comes from Dylan, and he said, "What is the deal with getting your name out there?" That's my best Jerry Seinfeld impersonation. In the subject line, he actually says, "Cue Jerry Seinfeld." Who are these people? All right. Hey, fellas. I'm an illustrator based out of the Midwest, and I'm beginning my illustration ventures of looking for an agent. I feel like I have a signature style, created a portfolio, and have begun submitting. Is there anything during this time that I could do to amplify myself further into the earshot of agencies beyond just submitting? And I'm going to pull up his website here because I really, this guy is doing some professional work. It looks good. And I'm wondering what you guys think. I'm gonna just share the screen here so you can check it out. He has sort of like it's like a cross between, I would say, like Tony DiTerlizzi style and
Mhm.
like a sort of like a contemporary. Hold on, it's loading. Like
And
a
whatever you're going to
contemporary-
say, and some Corey Godby thrown in there.
a little bit of Corey Godby, but also like there's some sort of contemporary illustration ish stuff to it a little bit there, but very linear, like very graceful line work that he's doing. For some reason that one wasn't loading up. Very graceful line work that he's doing. It looks like it's watercolored or it's digitally, watercolored, and I think he's definitely ready to rock and roll as a professional.
My number
But what would you-
one critique is he needs to increase his understanding and use of value, specifically in getting darks in the right places, darker values. Yeah,
that's like your overall critique on just the style.
yeah.
I think there's a critique to be made that, when he says agent, I'm assuming did it say in there what kind of agent he's trying to get? Publishing is what I'm thinking.
I assume, looking at it, like this is the guy you would want to hire to illustrate your middle grade or one of those book, not middle grade, but I think it's like I forget the term now, but it's essentially an illustrated novel for kids, where it's like 60 illustrations in a prose style book, right? And he's doing the cover and then like black and white illustrations in it, or would be maybe color illustrations as well. I could see this guy getting work doing something with role-playing games. Also, like
I just don't
I
see a
could,
huge market for that. It seems so specific. I mean, if I was, that one's actually a really cool kind of image, a little bit reminiscent of the
mhm.
Iron Giant, but still, it doesn't feel contemporary. A lot of it to me. It's funny that you go right to that one. It's doesn't feel contemporary. It's a little Hobbit-esque, which I think can be a turnoff to a publisher because it seems like this is all you got. Like, what if I have a story about a kid in middle school, and unless they're transported back in time, I don't know how that's going to look. Like, what does a modern city look like in your characters in a modern setting? I would say there
Mhm.
needs to be more variety in the portfolio, because like the Hobbit stuff is you got down, but I swear publishers are so limited. This is my crit on publishers more than this person. If I can
Mhm.
draw all this stuff, of course I can draw something modern, but they do not know that.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and so they'll be like, oh, I guess he can only draw back in the Hobbit times.
Right.
and
Right.
and they're very very limited that way. It's very weird. So you have to have, especially as you're starting, sort of a wide variety of stuff shown done in a style that is your own, so the publisher can picture it. Oh yeah, I see exactly what they want.
You
You
know
know,
what though? This guy's stuff is all. Did you look at the sketchbook yet, Jake?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Sort of
this is what he wants to do.
yeah.
So, there are plenty of projects if he's assigning them to himself. If he's doing his
yeah,
own
but
game,
that can't be our go-to answer. Like,
I
hey, you know
know,
what?
but
But you're right.
that
You're
is
right. I
like,
see
I
what you're
mean,
saying.
like to say you need to draw children doing things, emotions and actions, and or you need to draw, I don't know, more stuff that looks age appropriate for middle grade or YA fantasy stuff. Maybe he doesn't want to do that.
If he
I
doesn't,
feel
then
like
but his question doesn't denote that. That would be a question of, should I apply to agents or should I self-publish my own?
That's a
And then
good
that would
point.
be the answer. But
Yeah,
like
that's a good
he's
point.
saying he wants an agent, and that's what the agents are going to say.
A good point.
here's what I see happening. He's going to get an agent, or he's going to get on with some agency, and he's going to be the go-to guy for this style of art. For the, we've got a project. Which one of your artists does like fantasy? Does really illustrative, um, fantasy linear style like work? And they're going to be like, we got your guy. We can't afford Tony DiTerlizzi, or he's unavailable, so let's get this guy. And he'll get those jobs. The question is, how many of those jobs are there, right? And in the meantime, I think just some practical advice for him would be um, to like Will said, keep making. I don't know that you go back in and fix any of these, but I would keep making new pieces in the meantime that have a little bit more value, and and maybe broaden your subject matter a little bit more. So it could still be fantasy, but maybe it's like a fantasy character in a different sort of environment, a more contemporary environment, or something like that. I think also you're going to want to eliminate a few of your more less appealing pieces. Like I feel like this one isn't up to the quality that
Mhm.
this is the elf with the
Let's all pick one or two pieces that we would have him replace.
Okay. I'll go first.
Go ahead.
This one, obviously, I would say this one just isn't there. It's a the eyes aren't the eyes aren't at the anatomically appealing, I guess.
The lighting is
Um,
flat.
Lighting's flat. The anatomy, it's weird that this ear is sticking, facing us, even though the head's turned away. So I would get rid of that one. What one would you do, Will?
The green one underneath, down lower
This one.
with the, yeah. And the
The
reason
robot
is
monkey.
that one is again, like you have light coming from everywhere, which means you have light. If you have 3 or 4 different light sources, you have lights all canceling each other out.
Right.
So you can't have interesting shadows. You can't have interesting light side, dark side on faces. Everything becomes flattened, and it's also the texture of the airbrushed background, the Photoshop, flat background isn't helping you on that piece at all. It's just
okay.
Yeah.
And Lee, which one would you get rid of?
I'll take Lee's turn.
I was gonna say I don't know about replacing. I don't think there's a lot of storytelling going on here. Really, it's this, in my opinion, I would label this a glorified character designer.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
And I just think there needs to be more things happening. There needs to be
situational narratives.
Yeah.
Like just think of this. You need to have some clear action stories and emotion pieces.
That would be my hit.
Yeah.
I was the other day, I got sucked into a Norman Rockwell like collection of all of his covers. We have this book, it's like he did covers for the Saturday Evening Post, which was a large magazine. And this book has replications of them at the size they were printed. So it's a really nice collection. And I just happened to like flip it open, and for 20 minutes I just kept flipping through, looking at them. And I'm like, every single artist that can hear my voice right now, regardless of your ability level, you need to, for one day, don't look at anything that any artist has posted on social media, has posted on a website, nothing that was created by any current contemporary artist, and just look at Norman Rockwell for a day. Just look at his art for a day and soak it in, because every single one of his illustrations tells a story. There's drama, there's beautiful composition, there is incredible poses, lighting, shadow, everything that any artist is trying to do today. He already did it 50 years ago, 100 years ago, practically. Right. Some of those covers he started doing in the 20s. And so you really need to get your grounding and your footing by studying these early illustrators, Norman Rockwell, J.C. Leyendecker, the Brandywine artists, Wyeth, and who are the other guys? N.C. Wyeth and the other guys.
Well, you use them all the time. Like just what they did. As a matter of fact, the face that I drew yesterday on my tarot card came from Vanderpel, which was a contemporary of those guys. Not directly, but like there's a how to draw. He had a how to draw heads book, and I always use it because he's one of the few people who was a very value-based drawer, which is what I kind of think in that way. And and everything he did was gorgeous in my opinion. And so I go back to that,
Right. Like just to pull out one example, we always say this, like, what's the story? What's the story? And I look at some of these, like, this is fine. It's a guy and a robot, and they're having looks like they're playing together or something like that. But it's like the story here is just that. And I want to compare a Norman Rockwell post cover that he did. And it's a girl. You immediately see there's a girl walking down a trail, but it's all vignette. So the fact that it's a trail means that he added just enough detail in there to tell you it's a trail. And she's got a basket, looks like of goodies or something. And she's walking along, and she's covering her eyes. And you're like, why is she covering her eyes? And then you notice the second beat is, so that just minus covering her eyes, that's what most illustrations I see, myself included too, is it's just a character walking down a path, right? But Norman Rockwell's like, I'm going to take it to the next step further. I'm going to cover her eyes. And now you're like wondering what is going on with this character. And then you see a sign that says no swimming, behind her. And you're like, oh, what's going on there? And then you see next to this no swimming sign, a bunch of boys' clothes just strewn all over the place.
Yep.
And then it clicks and you realize, oh, that's the joke. Like she just saw a bunch of naked buns jumping in and out of the pool, and she didn't want to see that. And she's just trying to get from point A to point B without seeing that. And so in that one single illustration, we got such depth, we got character, we've got beautiful composition, we've got all this stuff. And it's just something that you don't see a ton of in illustration these days. And so I think we kind of strayed from his original question. What should I be doing in the meantime?
No, you
Well,
didn't.
no, but this is what he should be doing.
This is what it is. Go back, pull it back up again.
Okay.
Because I want to talk about one of them. And it,
Okay.
and it really does come down to, will you pull up the one with the lion?
Yeah.
It really does come down to, and I know you guys that are regular listeners are sick and tired of hearing
This one?
I'm going to say it again. No, the down
This one?
further, where the woman's pointing at the lion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It'll load. It's just super slow. I don't know if it's my connection or if it's his.
Oh,
his
interesting.
website.
There we go. So yeah, so what we can tell from this, if I'm an art director, I'm gonna looking to hire somebody to illustrate a YA fantasy or something like that, and this, I like that I'm seeing good folds on the fabric. I'm seeing good anatomy, decent hands. But I have, my story has got a lot of drama, and this is what we're really saying is, it's a woman pointing at a lion. At the end of the day, it's like there's
Right.
nothing more. You're not demonstrating that you can take a text and pull out an interesting part of that story and tell it visually.
Right. One other rookie mistake here too is his main character, that woman character, her back is completely faced us.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the back of her head.
And it'll be
And-
easy to get to a 3/4 back view, at least get a little bit of a profile.
Yeah. One thing that Will Eisner, he's a comic artist, one thing that he taught was every panel that you draw in a comic, every illustration that you make, think of it as a play on a stage. And if you've ever been to a play on a stage, seen a play on a stage, they get across so much information with just a few props. Like we went to a play a couple months ago where it was like a murder mystery, and the play was in the middle, and all the audience were like surrounded around it. So you had essentially the stage was just surrounded by audience, and so at any given moment somebody's back was like facing you, right? But however they were able to like coordinate this and come across that we are in a mansion, even though there were no walls and there was no like ceiling to this, and there's just these characters interacting. We had a desk, we had a fancy chair, we had maybe a little chandelier hanging from the ceiling, and all of us got, this is a mansion that we're in, because of the way the characters were behaving and posing, and because of the few props there. And I think it's the same with illustration, especially this one with the line, is have your characters facing the audience, but still have them responding to the lion that they're facing. So that means just turning them, but they could still be like looking at them, from a side view. What kind of elements can you eliminate, and what elements do you bring in to just convey that this is where we're at? And I think having that sort of understanding in your illustrations can take them so much further. Just thinking, what is the clearest, easiest way to like represent the thing that I'm going for, and not get too fancy with composition, and not get too like noodly with all the details and whatnot. So I guess short answer to this is you've got a portfolio that will probably get you some kind of work, but I think the portfolio that's going to keep you getting work has yet to be made. And I think in the meantime, I would just set a goal like in the next 6 months to make, 10 new pieces that are really killer and start padding out this portfolio even more. One thing that's interesting, and I don't know if this is for you guys, but for me personally, like it's rare that I do work for a client that I'm like so proud of, and that's like a portfolio piece that I just want to share with everybody. It's usually like I'm just getting the job done, and I'm bringing like, I'm bringing obviously my A game to it, but the subject matter, the timeline that I had to work on it were such that I couldn't really pour myself entirely into it. And so when I want to make a portfolio piece usually comes from a project that I've come up with, that I'm working on myself, idea that I have. And so my portfolio is like filled with these sort of illustrations that could only have come from me, but those illustrations get me the work that pays the bills.
Yeah.
And then I could share, I worked on this project. And a lot of times, like I did a bunch of Lorcana cards for Disney, and they're all pretty good, but I'm not super, super proud of them because, it's a Disney character, and I was limited in the pose that I could do. I was limited in the environment that I could do, but I could say I worked for Disney now, right? And the work that got me those Lorcana cards wasn't Disney work that I did. It was my own personal work. So make stuff that excites you, build out that portfolio, and you'll get some work.
Client work is really hard.
Can I share Norman Rockwell?
Oh, go ahead.
I love it.
All right. What do you guys think's happening in this image right here? Now, of course, if you're just listening, we're on YouTube at School of Visual Storytelling. But, this is an entire visual story. You could write this out in words, right? Here's these kids. This is what I get out of it. Here's these kids that have had this empty lot for a long time. They've been playing baseball, and looks like someone's bought it, and they're probably there to dig the hole for a new house. And the kids are kind of pleading. The kids are kind of pleading their case, right?
Right. And there's a big backhoe, and there's the two construction workers there. It's really good because adding or subtracting really becomes the true test of a good illustrator. And the addition of the blueprints, the construction worker is holding blueprints. You take out the blueprints, the whole thing sort of falls down.
You don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's just, that addition is like, hey, we're here. We have a job to do, and we're trying to build something new. It's not just like somebody driving a bulldozer through an empty lot,
Right.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I found
and you need to think like that, because the art director's got a problem. They've got a story they need illustrated, and you can't think of yourself as just a set of hands that's just going to, draw whatever they tell you. They're looking for your input as well. They want your creative mind. They want you to be able to come up with ideas that they didn't think of. And if they can see it demonstrated in your portfolio, you're going to be a leg up on the competition.
I found that Norman Rockwell image I was talking about. If you want to stop sharing your screen, and I'll share mine. Here we go. You see that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's that. I mean, there's not even a background.
Right. I mean, imagine if you could bring this to your character designs. This just tells so much about her personality, tells so much about the time period, even add a little bit, just a little edge of water right there. And that's just enough to know that like, this is some sort of public water place, a no swimming sign posted, and
incredible.
And it's perfect. He's the best. All right, next question. This comes in from Sean. Adobe certifications for jobs and higher pay. So he says, I'm a longtime user of Adobe products and have a college degree in art. I want to take Adobe's exams to get certification with Photoshop, Illustrator, and such. Do you guys think that the certifications through Adobe will increase my chances of getting hired on versus someone who doesn't? If going this route will add validation to my knowledge skills versus someone who goes by their talents alone. Also, with obtaining certifications will increase my chances of getting higher pay rate for jobs. I want to know if going this route will benefit my credibility in the long run for getting hired on. Thank you guys for doing the podcast and for sharing your knowledge with the community. What do you guys think about Adobe certifications? And do you have Adobe certifications, either of you?
No one hires anyone for any kind of certification that you can post on your website.
Well, I don't know. I disagree because it depends it depends on what
Here
kind of
we
job
go.
you want. In universities, because they are so goofy,
Well,
they love stuff like that.
I
They
assumed he was
love-
talking about freelance work.
No, he didn't say that though. He said, he said chances of getting hired versus someone who doesn't. If your job is going to be a university art teacher, it will absolutely help you because they love meaningless decorations.
But the word hired is ambiguous. So if it's hired for freelance work, no. But if you're right, in a university setting,
staff jobs,
it's the certifications over the portfolio. It's exactly flipped. So
Right.
unfortunate for students that is the case. All right, the gloves have to come off here.
Gloves are off.
I met somebody the other day.
Uh-oh.
I met somebody the other day who, and I have to be vague about this. They're teaching in a school setting, and their art looks like, it looks like any junior high kid's art. Like there's absolutely, like, it looks like the worst kid in the junior high art class.
Okay.
Gloves are off for sure.
And it just is proof that the system for art in education is broken. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't great artists who make it into teaching. There are plenty, and we can all rattle off a long list of amazing artists that are in both public and higher education. However, there's also an amazing list, and I would argue that it's even longer, of those that can't do teaching. And it's because of this. Yeah.
Wait, aren't we teaching?
Yeah. but I included us in the list of the good people, right? See how I did that?
So what I think here, I think the more corporate and bureaucratic the organization, the more they're going to value your certifications, because it's not, because the way these entities are set up, it really is about, like, what does the paperwork say about this person versus
they need to justify you to their boss,
right?
And so they say, he's got the Adobe certification, I can't go wrong. Everybody's trying to protect their own job,
right? And
if that's how they do it, they say, he's got to be good, he's got the Adobe certification, and that way that person is off the hook who hired you.
Right. I will say this. So, like, I'll just list off the types of employers that are going to, like, look at the Adobe certificates and think, okay, this is a check mark in your favor, right? So if you're trying to get a job at a big design firm or an advertising agency, of course, and I will say this, portfolio is ultimate. Like, it's the most important thing. Like, you can't show up with no portfolio and just say, I'm certified and here's my certifications. Maybe for some of these that might be possible, but ultimately you got to be able to walk the walk. Okay. But I think a big design firm or a big advertising agency or a marketing department for a big company, Fortune 500 company, they're going to want to see that you're certified. Possibly one of these big publishing houses, if they're hiring a designer, somebody for the graphic design department, a Simon & Schuster, and they need someone who does book covers. Of course, they're going to look at your portfolio and see if you could do it. But if it also says there, yes, I'm certified in Adobe, that might tip the scales in your favor. Maybe like a web design agency, and then obviously like educational institutions, I think, as well.
It's fair.
So yeah, so I think that it does. I don't think it's going to get you the job, but I definitely think it would play a role in you. It not having those might play a role in you not getting the job. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Story time.
I
One
think
thing that getting it, I mean, regardless of whether it helps you or not, it also can't hurt. So like
Yeah.
if you get the certification, what's the worst case scenario? Is it doesn't help.
Right.
Well, I guarantee you guys right now, if I were to go take the test for Photoshop certification, I would fail.
Me too.
And I use
I'd fail
I've
worse
used
than you.
Photoshop every single day of my
I
life
would
since
ace that
1998.
exam like nobody's business.
But see,
because
but Lee, your artwork level reflects that.
If you took it today,
not
you
overly
would not.
Photoshop. I can use the airbrush. I can use the bucket.
I use about 5% of Photoshop to do
I don't even use that
95%
much.
of my work.
I use
It's probably more like the
0.5%.
80-20 rule, right?
Yeah.
Let me tell you guys a story.
Yeah. Okay.
So
we're gonna sit cross-legged on the floor around
Go, Will.
Terry.
here I am. I'm finishing up at BYU in the BFA, and I'm one of probably 3 or 4 people at the top of my class. As a senior, when I went in, I was struggling, and so I'm doing really well. And I was getting bad grades in my general ed because I wasn't focused on those classes. I was living in the studio, the art studio, right? Like I would get there at 6 a.m. and I wouldn't leave until night. And I'd go to my classes, but I would just be in there painting and drawing and everything. And IBM was hiring a bunch of artists. They wanted to make these children's books to teach something. I don't even know what it was, but they had this big project. And rather than hire freelancers, they wanted hire in-house people. And they came to the college and started interviewing. And so all my classmates are interviewing. And so I'm like, well, maybe I might as well do it too. And they were paying good. I mean, my on-campus job at the time, I was making like $350 every other week or something like that. And this thing paid 3 or 4 times that, so it was like a real job. It was like, and who knows where it would go later on. So it was a big deal. So my classmates start getting hired, and I go down there and I get an interview, and the guy, he's looking at my portfolio and he's looking at my grades, and he goes, I love this portfolio, but what, and then all of a sudden he became my dad, right? And he goes, but what's going on with these grades here? And I'm like, and I already was prepared because I was pretty sure that was going to be a sticky point. And I'm like, I don't know. I spent all my time working on the art, which is what you guys are hiring for, right? And he's like, yeah, but I can't justify these grades. I'd love to hire you, but I can't justify these grades to my boss. Exactly what you said, Lee. He's like, IBM has a standard to meet, and this just doesn't cut it. And it was almost like he was trying to make me feel bad. Like, and I refused to feel bad for that. Like I'm like, I know where I fit in. And now you've just told me. So fast forward, a lot of the students that got hired, cause we were all friends. We were all in the same class. Years later, they were like, man, that job messed me up. Cause I was getting all of a sudden I was getting all this money. And then I thought I was like an illustrator, working illustrator. And then they just laid everybody off.
Boom.
And then I couldn't get a job anywhere else. And so most of them ended up doing things other than illustration, so be careful what you wish for too. Might be a side moral of the story, but
side moral, the more you know.
But yeah, they had the qualifications, they had the grades.
Yeah. All right. Next question. This comes in from David. He says, income via social media is what he's want to know. How much income is driven or created from social media? Have we ever calculated that ourselves? This could be Kickstarters, promotions, commissions. It would be interesting to hear any stats you have on how much of your living is generated as a direct response to a social media post or call out. Personally, I'm not sure I would accept commissions any longer via social media due to the amount of spam.
Mm.
Yeah. So, how's it for you guys?
Well, since we're leaning self-publishing, it's all of it. It's 100% from. I mean, it included Kickstarter in there, and that's going to be pretty much everything with social media, and then leading towards a Kickstarter, and then teaching that same stuff. That's all of my income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a breakdown. You guys remember
Break it
a couple
down.
weeks ago, break it down. Here we go. No, a couple of weeks ago, we recorded our case studies for Self-Publishing Pro. The three of us each did our a case study for one of the books that we did, and it was like I think that's one of the coolest lectures that we've done for this whole Self-Publishing Pro thing. I think that lecture itself was like encapsulated the entire 9 weeks, because Will talked about everything that went into preparation for his Kickstarter. I talked about Will didn't do a Kickstarter. It was everything that went in preparation and how Pickleball Paul book series sort of panned out, or is panning out. I talked specifically about my Kickstarter for Robots book, numbers, graphs, charts, all that stuff. And then Lee, yours was like, here's what was it specifically for? It was for which book was it? Oh, the tarot deck, right?
It was for the tarot deck. Yeah.
Yeah. And Lee just had a great breakdown of everything that he went into, like getting this tarot deck like figured out and doing his research and all that stuff.
Line item by line item, like penny down to the penny, how it all worked. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I pulled this. I'll share my screen here for this one too. Make sure it's right. But this is from my my robots Kickstarter. I broke it down what each specific social media thing, what I earned through that Kickstarter. And so I made a specific link so I could track funds that came through those links. And I did it for Threads, ArtStation, Reddit, my homepage, my Patreon, YouTube live streams, Twitter, Instagram, and my newsletter. And I'll start with the bottom first. So Reddit, I did a post on Reddit. I got one sale, $36. On Threads, I did a couple of posts, $125. ArtStation, I posted about it, $169. My homepage, $524. That was people coming through the link on my homepage. Patreon, so patrons coming over, $541. YouTube live streams, $854. I did 6 live streams, I believe, all with the same link. Hey, go check out my book. Twitter, I posted about it almost every day of the campaign. That was $1,170. And then Instagram, I posted almost every other day on Instagram with a link in my bio, and that was $2,200. And then my newsletter, I did an email at launch. I did Friday emails all through the Kickstarter, so full Friday emails, and then an email again at the close. So I think it was 6 emails, and that was $11,862. And so I think combined pledged via external refers or custom refers is about $17,000 just for that one Kickstarter. And that was my social media efforts, how they played into that particular project. Outside of that, if I'll try to do an art sale here and there, and people come over from it, but I kind of feel like it's the same sort of level. I get way more people coming over from my newsletter than I do from any other like social media thing.
Yeah.
I will say too, though, like once you can get, I would say a couple 100,000 followers, you start getting noticed by brands, and so they want to. That you could reach out to them, or they'll reach out to you, and they'll say, "Hey, would you mind, giving us a shout out about our product?" And so they'll send you maybe some markers or a cool new art supply or something like that. I know you recently did that, Lee, with watercolor, right?
That was my money tip.
Oh, it was. You remember? Well, we'll save that for last. But I want to get that when you get up to 1 million followers, then actual money. You could start charging actual money for your posts, and typically a single post is like $5,000. And you could get all the way up to $10, $15, $20,000 for a particular set of posts. So you might post on Instagram and then also do an email shout out at the same time, or a story on Instagram along with that, or something like that. So
can you call yourself an influencer at that point?
Absolutely. I mean, at any point you can call yourself an influencer. In Self-Publisher Pro, we talked about the different like levels of influencers. So there's micro influencers who have, under 1,000 followers, but they still have influence. A lot of times they have more power to sway their 1,000 followers than someone who has, 1 million followers, the higher percentage. And then there's all the way up to like mega influencers, which are 1 million plus people. So yeah, there's money to be made with your social media. The big question though, is the juice worth the squeeze? Because you got to do so much work to stay on top of it, and to always be posting and all that. And I find the biggest bang for your buck is driving people to a newsletter that you keep updated pretty frequently.
All right. Like it.
Okay, what's Lee's money tip?
I need to come up with my song. Let me think of it real quick.
Wait, the jingle changes every time though.
It's got to be specific, so it's spontaneous. I'm just gonna start singing and I'll figure it out once I get there. Lee's money tips. We're asking for what you want, get you lots of free stuff.
Oh man, maybe
can we
should retire this?
Okay, so my tip has it's a simple thing, but it encompasses a lot more than you might think. My tip really is the days of you being like, you get the call or you get the email or you get the message, hey, we want to hire you and we're going to give you all this money and stuff. That's just over. I mean, it's just sort of over. And that's how illustrators, we were talking about Norman Rockwell. That's how it used to work back in the day. Yeah. Is you put your stuff sort of out there and then you just kind of wait and then you get these things. It just doesn't happen anymore. So my money tip really is look at the things you're making, look at the things you're using, and see where you can maybe partner with somebody or make your own deal. I mean, for the work that you're creating, what kind of product can you make? Obviously, we're talking about self-publishing a lot, so obviously it's going to be that. But it does encompass more than that. I'm looking at the materials I'm using, and then so I'm building a new watercolor palette right now for this travel class that I'm doing. And I haven't used my watercolors in a little while, and so a lot of them were dried out and stuff. And I wanted to try a new brand of watercolor from Golden Paints, and I was like, you know what? Instead of going and buying all these paints, I'm just going to email them and say, will you please give me some free stuff, free paints?
What was your actual script? What did you say?
I have it. You want me to pull it up?
Is it written on a cardboard sign?
Oh, wait, it may have gone. I think I had to contact them through their email, through their website, where it has like enter your name and email and then a message. But essentially I said, hey, I'm a professional watercolorist. I am looking to evaluate some different brands while I'm building a class. Would you be interested in supplying some paints for that process? And I said, I'd be happy to tag you in my social media, and I'll be happy to do some reviews along the way of the paints. And they got back in touch with me and said, hey, so they apparently went to my website, went to my Instagram, and they said, hey, we like the work. I mean, the work always has to be the basis of everything, right? So they like the work. And they said, we would be happy to send you our starter kit with, I think it had like 8 colors or something like that, 6 colors or whatever, starter kit. And I was like, my response was, I really appreciate that offer. However, I would appreciate the 88 color set. And in addition to the 88 color set, I would like this, and this. I just keep asking over and over for what I want. Now, at the end of the day, if they would only send me those 6 colors, it's still 6 colors I didn't have to pay for and that I don't even know if I'd use anyway.
Right.
But they met me in the middle. They sent me like I can't remember, 35 or 32 color set, along with all this other stuff that I asked for. The mediums, there's some different watercolor mediums where you can paint on metal and other stuff like that with watercolor, which is kind of cool. And so they sent it to me, and now I'm doing the reviews. And then when I'm done with the reviews, I'm going to ask if I can be, and if I like that product, my next step is going to be asking if I can be part of an affiliate program and earn income by sending sales to these different areas. I'm also using the same idea by building I'm not going to pull it over here, a whole sketch travel kit that I'm building custom. And then I'm going to do the same thing with them. I'm going to either I'm going to make the whole thing and I'll just sell the whole thing myself, or I'm going to partner with some of these products that I'm using, but I'm testing them all right now to see which ones I actually want to use. But we're, again, going back to that listener question we had earlier, what's my worst case scenario? Is the worst case scenario is they say no.
Yeah, get out of town.
Yeah, we're not going to give you any free stuff. And then you say, fine, well, I'll go to, there's a lot of manufacturers that love this kind of stuff because what does it do for them? It lends them some authenticity. I'm a working illustrator. I'm using your product, and here's the result of it.
Did they say after you kept writing those letters, after we send you this, we consider the matter closed and we expect you to not write any more letters, kind of like Andy
I appreciate you wanting to end the relationship. However, how about you keep sending me unlimited supplies of things? That would be my anyway. But it's bigger than that though, because if you start to look around at the things you do, at the things you like, you can make these side businesses for yourself, or just make things easier on yourself. If you're using something, try to partner with those people. Especially if you're a firm believer in it, you don't want to be a cheese ball and just be a sort of a hand for hire, like you'll advertise anything. And we've done that with this podcast, where we've gotten requests. Hey, we'd like to sponsor the podcast. Would you mention us? And we're like, nope, we don't. We don't believe in what you're saying or selling. So you gotta believe in it. But asking, I've gotten a lot of work by doing an image, contacting a client and say, would you please use this on your cover? It's amazing how receptive people are to that question. Would you like to use this? It's done.
That's your superpower. That's besides making cool art, it's like your superpower is just like, let's see what we can do.
I mean, it's amazing. I was at the X Games and I just went up to this is a sort of a side thing, but it works everywhere. I was at the X Games just as a viewer. And I went up to the security guard and asked if I can view from the ramp, from the deck of the ramp. And he's like, yeah, there's the ladder. And he gave me a shirt that said staff. I put on the shirt and I climbed up there and I just watched the entire X Games on the top of the ramp.
Why did they let you do that?
Because I asked.
That's amazing. Is that back when you had long hair?
No.
Did you look like a skater?
This was fairly recently. I mean,
this was 2 weeks ago.
This was yesterday. No, it was probably about 5 years ago, or maybe a little longer than that, 7 years ago. But yeah, it may have actually been Dew Tour. I don't know if you remember that similar kind of thing as the X Games, but it's just amazing if you just go up. I'll tell you this. This is a super pro tip. If you put on an orange vest, you can do whatever you want in life anywhere.
Orange vest and carry a ladder.
And put a walkie-talkie in your hip pocket.
Anywhere.
Do anything.
Walkie-talkie's key, though.
The walkie-talkie. 10-4. I'm checking maintenance now.
Except for my wife in the kitchen. Like, I go in there and she's like, what do you want? Get out of here. Because I always screw stuff up.
But were you wearing an orange vest?
I should try it. I should see if the orange vest and ladder thing works in a hard hat.
Excuse me, miss. Doing some maintenance here.
Excuse me, man. Don't touch anything. Oh man. I honestly, it's comical how much I've screwed stuff up in the kitchen, where it's like,
I just stay out of there.
yeah.
You can do
All right, should
anything
we
in
wrap this
Hey, let me ask you guys real quick. Have you ever done that? Like asked for something, like been using something and kind of doing what I'm talking about? Does it work for other people, or have you tried anything like that?
Just ask for something.
Yeah. There was no correspondence at all. You just like said, "Hey, I want this thing and I want you to give it to me."
I can't think of a time. I feel like if I did, I would have easily been able to bring it up from memory. So that'll be my challenge this week. By the time we meet
I'm
next
sure
time.
you've done it, like a
Yeah.
lecture, being part of an event. Hey, I'm interested in showing at this thing.
I did actually. I
what is it?
contacted Backpacker Magazine and said, "Hey, I'm a backpacker. I love backpacking," and I sent them some pictures. This was dating me because Backpacker Magazine probably doesn't even exist anymore. In fact, for the young people listening, a magazine used to be a bunch of paper full. And they hired me twice.
So
Really?
it was a cold call. You're like, I've got an image with someone wearing a
I
backpack.
just sent them I sent them a cover letter and some pictures and my art. And
See?
this was back when you used to send tear sheets, and so I sent that stuff, and
It
yep, I got
works.
hired twice. So I was like,
That's
this is
amazing.
why I need to work for you guys, because, and I pointed to somebody else's art where they drew a backpack that wouldn't work. You know, they're like, they obviously don't even understand how the straps work and stuff. And here you're looking at a guy who knows about the hip
That's
belt.
some low level concept design. If they drew a backpack that wasn't functional, it's a bag with a zipper.
I have gotten a lot of free stuff from like through Inktober. When Inktober was like it's sort of leveled off now as far as participation, but when it was like climbing and it was the art challenge in October, now there's like 1,000 different art challenges in October. But when it was the art challenge, I would just get boxes and boxes of art. I mean, you remember that, Will? Like when we shared that office, I was always opening boxes of art supplies.
Yeah. Some of them I would just open and take the supplies.
What?
You never knew about it.
That's where that went.
Yeah.
No. So the point of that is that, like, if they're, I think if there is a way for them, there's just stuff set aside for marketing purposes at all these companies. And so, and if you can make any sort of argument or case for why you would be a good steward for them to like have some of that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm sure some of them have a certain quota that, how many supplies did you give away this month? So you're kind of helping them out and doing them a favor.
We tried to partner with Adobe for a long time, and they would never give us the free stuff that we wanted.
Never. We should.
So we
around
broke
that
in
one
one night. Should we tell them about that?
That's,
yeah.
Mom's the word. Mom is the word.
Free Photoshop. All right. Should we wrap it up?
Yep.
Let's wrap it up. All right, everybody. 3-Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLearn, where becoming a great illustrator starts. And your hosts are Lee White, Will Terry. I'm Jake Parker. And our podcast is produced by Daniel Tu. That's Daniel T.U. Special thanks to our keeper of the curriculum, Austin Shirtliff, our Shownotes wrangler, Lily Howell, our chief operations officer, Lisa Fott, and our illustrator, Annalise Black. Now go draw something.